Good morning. I'm Joey Woolmark, and I'd like to welcome you to the second of our two digital workshops this month on the analog to digital phone switchover. Our first workshop, which was held last Wednesday, was around the issues surrounding the mobile communications network. And if you missed that event, you can see it both on our events page on our website and also on our YouTube page as well. Today's workshop moves us on to look at service review and service redesign and what we can do to ensure that as we transform from analog to digital, that we do it safely and protect our service users. Today we have 5 organisations who have real life experience of helping other organisations to transfer over to digital. So it's your opportunity to listen to the 5 presentations, but also to join in the discussion and raise your questions during the panel session. If you would like to ask a question, and I encourage you to do so during the panel session, please use the raised hand, and Julia, our producer, will send you a message to unmute, and then you'll be able to ask your question directly to the panel. If you haven't got audio, don't worry. You can also ask your questions through the chat facility. I would ask you to make sure the chat facility is on switch to everyone and not just panelists, so we can share your questions with all the delegates when you ask them. Also, if you think of any questions during the presentations, please enter them in the chat box as well, and we will pick those up for you when the panel session starts. This event will be recorded, and the recordings will be available again on our website and on YouTube. So our first presenter today, and also the facilitator of the workshops, is James Lampard, who is from NRS Healthcare. So I'd like to hand over now to James. Thank you very much, James.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you here today. Maybe just before I do start, could I just get the other panelists just to show themselves on camera, just give everybody a quick wave so you can see who's coming up next. So the first part of the session today, everybody can introduce themselves in turn in just a few moments when they do the presentations. But the first part of the session today, up until around about 11:25, is going to be a series of presentations from everybody on the panels. And then we're going to go into a kind of an hour's panel session, which ought to be a really interesting discussion. And I'd really encourage you to put some questions into the chat box as we go through the presentations, and we can pick those up as we go through the panel session later on. And there's also an opportunity, if you'd like to actually speak rather than just popping something into the chat box during the panel session, then by all means, we'd love to see your face and hear what you've got to say as well and contribute to the conversation. So there we go. Right, I'm going to dive in. Panelists, you can turn your cameras off now. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon. Right, I'm going to just share my screen now. So first of all, just to start off, a little bit about me for people that don't know me. I'm James Lampert. I'm Head of Innovation and Partnerships for Technology Enabled Care at NRS Healthcare. We're a provider of a range of different services, which I'll tell you a little bit about in just a moment. But my own personal background, I've worked in health and social care since the mid-90s. I'm an occupational therapist by background, worked for a long time in local authorities, bits of time in charities, the NHS, and I've had the great privilege of working for NRS Healthcare for the last 5 years in our technology-enabled care services. So for the first 4 years, operationally responsible for our services we deliver nationally, and in our business development and innovation team since October last year. So if we just dive straight into the presentation, a little bit about us. I won't linger on this slide too much. So we do community equipment services, clinical services, occupational therapy assessments, wheelchair services, big self-funder market, and the bit that I'm talking about today are our technology-enabled care services, and trying to bring to life with some examples some of the work that we've been doing around service redesign and in relation to the digital switchover. So we currently provide telecare and tech services into 14 different local authorities. Here's just some of our customers. Again, you can have a quick look at that, but from working in cities, Sheffield, London, to some of the kind of shire counties and larger areas, which of course with some rurality also brings some of its own challenges, which I'll touch on later. So just to start off with, really, there's quite a lot of issues out there at the moment, and so just in terms of some of the conversations that I see happening within our own services and through some of the conversations I have with our customers, these are the sorts of issues that we're seeing coming up. So just to go through kind of each in point. The first one, I think, is just more of a general observation, really, in some of the work that I'll talk about in a moment, that ADAS have recently published, the Associations of Directors of Adult Social Services. I'm sure lots of people will be familiar with this kind of idea, is that often digital technology is seen as an add-on. It's a bolt-on to existing services, and it isn't fully integrated. And often the decisions about the kinds of technologies which are provided through statutory services are often led by kind of professionals, rather than necessarily really including people who draw on care and support themselves, which is one area that I'm really passionate about with, and really working proactively on at the moment around co-producing and developing services. People are actually using them. I'm sure as well in the panel session later on, we're going to talk about the cost of technology being prohibitive, both for public sector funders. So what does it mean, and what do public sector funders need to do in order to secure the funding for some of these technologies? Not just swapping out like for like analog with digital equipment, but also how do you start to move into some of the more sophisticated technologies which could actually help you to radically transform the way that care and health services are delivered. And there's also an element here for end consumers, because of course not all this stuff needs to be publicly funded. There's a lot of people that want to, can afford to buy their own technologies to support them to live the lives they want. But actually how do you enable them to understand the best way of doing that and getting the best sort of bang for their buck, really. We're all familiar with technology solutions not being interoperable, not talking to each other, which means you can have lots of siloed technologies which sit alongside one another, which doesn't give the best experience for the end user, and it can overcomplicate things unnecessarily. There's a huge amount of work to be done around the workforce. There are various work streams within lots of different organisations. I was on a seminar session last week with Skills for Care, which is inviting occupational therapists to come together to look at digital skills required around technology-enabled care. And again, particularly within the home care and supported living kind of workforces, there's a long way to go so that people can use different technologies alongside the people that they're working with to help them live their best lives. Some of the councils that I'm kind of working with at the moment, but did it come as a shock to me? I don't know. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But some councils still don't have a plan for the digital switchover. Maybe still buying old analog telecare equipment, asking us to buy old analog telecare equipment, which is becoming increasingly hard to source now. And actually, given the end of 2025 is fast approaching, that being the last point at which analog lines are switched off. Certainly one of the things I'd be saying is please don't buy any more analog equipment and don't ask us to source it for you. And that's really a big message. And then the other thing is that although there are some local authorities which are really forward thinking about proactive and preventative care, some of the technology available is either in its infancy, is still on its road to development. And for me, one of the biggest challenges there is around how you change care pathways, how you change practice within local authority, NHS and housing workforces, so that technology is embedded within the work that's done. One of the other things I see lots of the tenders that come out, is that some local authorities are still tendering for effectively an analogue service. It doesn't actually say that in the service specification, but the things they're asking for are kind of steeped in the past and not that forward looking. So again, more than happy to talk to organisations as well, many of my colleagues on the call, to help point you in the right direction on that. And then the final point I wanted to make is often as well you see lack of joined up strategy between health, housing and social care organisations, with, again, things either being commissioned in silos or one organisation or one type of organisation saying that it's hard to engage with others in that same place-based area. So that's some of the problems I'm seeing. In terms of what I think some people on the call might need now for the future is to work with a strategic partner that's got expertise in transitioning from reactive to proactive services which are outcomes based and harness that power of digital technology. And really, this is just a pointer. There was an ADAS report, the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services, Time to Act, a roadmap for reforming care and support in England, has just been published. There's a section in there on digital technologies. And some of the things it draws out there is around requirement to co-produce, to work across localities and boundaries. So local authorities or ICB areas might want to collaborate. And again, that kind of workforce theme that I've already talked about. Not going to spend too long on this slide, other than to say, if you're thinking about redesigning your tech services, it's not just about the digital switchover, moving from digital to from analog to digital. It's also about what else do you need to underpin the success of that service, which often includes important things like measuring return on investment, measuring softer outcomes, not just financial but personal outcomes, and about having a great culture change program which is going to support you and your staff to think about doing things in a different way, and increasingly in the future making much better use of the data which will be available through digital devices, to give you some insights so that better decisions can be made either at a person's own level because they're deteriorating and need some additional support, or maybe to make some better commissioning decisions and understand more about your population and population health. So just my final slide really was just before I finish to give some kind of practical examples. So one, and people can talk to me about this afterwards, and we've worked with Kent County Council for the past year. We recently won Kent Health Watch recognition awards in partnership with the council, and we think we did some quite good work there around really listening to local people and understanding the impact of the technology, finding out from them what difference it actually did make to their lives so they could lead better lives. And we also collected stories, some quite insightful insights that we got from there, and not the usual didn't it work great kind of case studies, but also when didn't technology work well. And we heard from people about some of the barriers, some of the issues they'd faced in getting it in a timely way, wishing that they'd maybe had it earlier on so it could have had a greater impact earlier on in life. And then also to say we're running some workshops. We're actually working with Sheffield City Council at the moment, and running some focus groups with people who draw on care and support and with carers, as those services are being designed, and really genuinely involving them from the start and listening to what they have to say. So if we listen to people, then the likelihood is we're going to get some of the services right. And then just to touch on one of the digital switchover programmes we've done, we've been working with North Yorkshire County Council. Effectively about 5 years ago, we inherited an all analogue service, and probably two and a half years ago now, we started to make the transition to digital. So lots of people out there now with digital devices. We started putting out digital ready devices, and at the point we were able to start implementing escape protocols. We were able to do over the air upgrades. We're now working with the issue of the 3G switch off, which I know Steve is going to touch on in his next presentation. And also just to say that we're also working with 2IC Care and with the County Council, looking at how you can support people who live in rural areas where there's little or no connectivity for mobile phone signals. So again, that's a really interesting project which we're just embarking on. And then finally, just some resources. So talk to us. There's our website, norishealthcare.com/techs. And then the other piece of information I just wanted to point you to, if you weren't familiar with it, is the Department of Health and Social Care's Telecare Stakeholder Action Plan, the analog to digital switchover. So if you put those words into Google, you'll find it. And again, I know that Steve from Text Advisory and UK Telehealth Care are involved in working with them to develop some guidance documents. So maybe we'll talk about those later on during the panel session. Right, that's it from me. I'm going to stop sharing. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's next.
Okay, thanks, James, and good morning, everybody. Let me just see if I can share a screen and get things running. We do a slideshow from the beginning. There we go. So hopefully everybody can actually see that. I'm sure more than one person will let me know if that's not working properly. So just very quickly, an introduction to myself. I guess I'm one of the old mans of the industry these days, and it's rather frightening to figure out I've actually been working in the tech sector for 45 years. Started off designing emergency alarm systems in a company called Data Safety Controls, and went through a number of companies running everything from European research projects, acting as a technical advisor to Oftel as it transitioned to Ofcom, and indeed running an IP networking company very much focused on the sector. From a commercial perspective, I've held a number of MD TO roles, including one vertical within Tunstall. I helped establish Cirrus, where I was MD, which is now changed its name to Apello. Always On, which was the networking company I mentioned, and Wellbeing, which was a telecare based in the southeast of England. We actually sold that business to Doro B of Sweden, and after that I was appointed as Global Vice President for Care Technology for Doro, which was eventually split into two businesses, and the care bit becoming Carium. Past board member of TSA, government advisor, and a mentor to a number of young entrepreneurs. But that's enough about me. A little bit of an introduction on the company. Text Advisory really was established to support commissioners and providers of health and social care and commercial businesses to implement technologies to really allow people to remain at home, to be empowered, to avoid hospital admissions, and where possible, get people that have been hospitalized out of hospital as quickly as possible. Those businesses range from commercial businesses such as Sky Response, an organization we've helped support enter the UK market. UK housing associations where we've supported M&A strategies, where we've done service and strategic reviews and put together strategies around the whole analog to digital conversion piece. I think that's probably a quick overview of the business. A couple of use case examples. One of our clients, West Lancsborough Council, had a challenge of running an existing telecare business, something that had been within the organisation for quite some time, but they were starting to become concerned that perhaps the business wasn't keeping up with the latest standards. It was certainly loss-making, and it was an operation that was becoming more and more difficult to support, partly because the more experienced people within the business were retiring or leaving the sector, and they were finding it difficult to find people from within the sector to take over the operation. So we were asked to come and have a look at the business. So we undertook a full business review to really clarify and verify what the position was. We presented that to the board of the company. Following that, they took a decision to actually close that. But we suggested there may well be an opportunity to find a buyer for the business. And that would be good in the sense of it would enact a smooth transfer of the customers, the connectivity and the service for those customers, but hopefully would also be able to protect as many of the staff employed in that business unit as possible. And we actually achieved that. So the process took some time, took about 3 or 4 months, but we eventually managed to sell the business to another housing association, from a local authority to a housing association rather. And because of the geographic location, all of the staff were offered new roles within the business. And I think the vast majority of them actually transferred and have settled into that new business very, very well. And that is a great example of, providing a level of expertise within an organization that didn't necessarily have that level of expertise in-house. Okay, the challenge and the opportunity, just a couple of bullet points really. Timing, 31 months left until the last analog connection is to be terminated. So time is running out. I guess I don't need to tell people on the call, that's why you're here. But we no longer have the luxury of time. And I've just underlined last because there is, I think, a misconception amongst some people that, it's almost like there'll be one big switch off at the end of 25, and that will be okay to that point. That's not true. At the end of 2025, on the 31st of December that year, the very last connection will be terminated. And certainly that's the plan of Openreach and the other providers. Is that likely to be delayed? Very unlikely, and primarily due to the obsolescence of the System X platform, which is currently running the network, which was launched back in 1979. And I'm reliably told by the Openreach team that components are no longer available, made to support the system. The vast majority of the staff trained on the system are now retiring, and they have absolutely no option but to replace. And indeed, where they are starting to replace those exchanges now, they're cannibalizing that equipment to keep some of the other exchanges going. So this is not a luxury of being able to delay. I'm not saying there won't be any potential delay, but all the messaging is you have to work on the assumption that December 2025 will be the drop dead date for the analog network. Another observation, individual alarm units, analog units should be phased out, and certainly no more analog devices should be installed. As a watchword, 3G devices should now be avoided as that network's been switched off. And I think some providers some service providers have bought 3G devices in the past using DTMF tone signaling, thinking they're digital devices. And sadly, that isn't necessarily the case. So that is something well worth checking with your equipment provider. However, it's not all negative. Opportunity, new models of care provision, system service integration and integrity. As I've said to many people, the first time an analog system is not going to work is when it doesn't work. The beauty about digital systems is, if they're set up correctly, they can be polled by a server, by the supplying organization, perhaps every 10 seconds, every minute or so, to ensure that the system is linked, connected, and actually working, which adds a huge amount of integrity into the system that didn't exist previously. So lots of positive elements going forward. And of course, there's the use of data that can be generated by digital devices, which can be presenting data all the time, and how that can be mined and engineered for preventative health and care. And I know Aaron, I think maybe on the call, and the team in Wales are very, very keen at looking how data can be collected with a level of commonality, and then be presented to the best outcomes for service users. Really, pretty much the last point, assisted living and digitalization. We talk about the 1.8, 1.9 million alarm devices we have in the UK, and we tend to think of dispersed alarm units in the main and worry about upgrading those. But the truth is, of this all circa 1.8, 800,000, so the 0.8, are call points within sheltered housing. And if professionally I have any concern for the sector, it's not around dispersed alarm units. I think most commissioners have now got that message, and the new devices they're buying are digital. and therefore over time, that problem will work its way out. But I'm really concerned at the amount of analog systems within sheltered housing and the lack of provision really to migrate those to digital. So I think this is an area that really requires careful consideration. And as Tech's advisor, we've just been invited to talk to a group of 5 housing associations in the southeast of England, who themselves are starting to get really worried because their existing service provider has been promising a solution for the last year or two. And as of today, they still can't provide accurate costings, nor actually a timeline for which they can absolutely implement that technology to allow the scheme to communicate digitally. Of course, that would just be a simple solution. You'd still have an analog system on site, but at least you'd have a site that can communicate with a digital call center and get around the A-to-D challenge. What are the options? Well, you can completely replace the equipment, and organizations like Apello create digital solutions to replace an old system. You could potentially have an analog to digital interface, so that takes the analog system, but actually ports out an IP interface. So it doesn't upgrade the on-site equipment, it doesn't give you a lot of the benefits, but at least it'll continue working past 2025. And the other options are to use a SaaS, a rooted individual approach to linking dispersed alarm units and routing calls to apps. Sky Response, everyone provides solutions like this that will actually allow a dispersed alarm unit to communicate with an on-site manager, typically with an app on a mobile phone, before then going through to a 24-hour monitoring center. And nowadays you can even integrate an IP door entry panel. You can even have that as a 4G device, so there's no cabling. And indeed, by using dispersed alarm units, you get rid of all of the cabling issues, which I know is quite a cost and quite a maintenance concern for a number of housing associations. So that's another approach as to how you can actually achieve digitalization within sheltered housing. And that's it from me. So I'll stop presenting and pass back to yourself, James.
That's great. Thank you very much, Steve. That was really insightful. I think there's probably some things we'll pick up there in a bit more detail through the duration of the panel session. Right, next I'm going to pass over, without further ado, to David Budd from Apello. So over to you, David.
Thank you very much. Just give me one moment to get my presentation up. And I'm assuming everyone can see that. Right, thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. I'm going to talk just a little bit about Apello and our digital product suite, but then also around some things that we've learned and certainly some things to be aware of if you're going through digital switchover, to help you kind of be prepared and go in with your eyes open. So very briefly, and I'm not going to read through all of these slides because you're going to get them afterwards. Apello have 35 years experience in the telecare sector. We have always looked to be a digital innovator. We developed the first digital end-to-end warden call system in the UK. So we already have about 40,000 residents using our smart living solutions and benefiting from that. Our digital call center has had over 4 million digital end-to-end calls, which is from what we're told, by far the most of any call center. And we operate multiple sites across the UK, now with over 400,000 connections between our 3 sites and our remote ARC workforce. Our monitoring centre is using our very own CareNet platform, which I'll talk a bit more in a minute, which is something we've developed ourselves with user input throughout, and we are now also providing to other ARCs who want to make that step to a digital ARC. We also have a very big consumer unit and already have over 10,000 customers who've now taken that journey to using digital alarms, so very experienced in both sides of the sector. And as part of our digital suite, we've developed the digital bridge, which is enabled us, using the power of cloud computing, to drastically reduce first-time call failure rates of analog alarms, which is obviously a big problem we're seeing as the digital switchover is happening. I've touched on this already. We have developed our own platform, and it's actually a suite of digital cloud-based products. The idea being that it's fully digital and it's fully able to be evolved and adapt, and able to take all kinds of signaling, of calls, of devices, to be a kind of a digital hub for telecare, telehealth, and to be anything our customers need it to be, and can be adapted to do that. This also includes SBR, which is very important. It's called single best record, and that enables our clients to have the power to control and to see their customer base, to update that, and to get all the information out of the system, so that they have the power at their fingertips to control their estate and their customer base. And as I say, we use this ourselves in our ARC, but also we can provide it to other ARCs who are looking to make that upgrade. We also have our digital dispersed alarm, which is the Smart Life. This is now being distributed on quite a large scale. We think it's the best dispersed alarm on the market, although we may be biased. It has a 4-second connection time because it uses TLS encryption instead of VPN. It can have roaming dual SIMs if that's a requirement, although it also has the ability to connect via Ethernet and Wi-Fi. So there are multiple connection options, which is very much what's recommended by the TSA and the government. It's fully British standard compliant, which is clearly very, very important. And it also, if you have an estate of these alarms, you've got digital management platform that enables you to have full sight and control over your estate of alarms, and to monitor them, to check they're all working, to see how they're being used. The other side of our product suite is our warden call systems for sheltered schemes. We have 2 of these, one of which is Smart Living Solutions. That's the one on the left, which is very much an all-singing, all-dancing system that enables you to take full advantage of what digital can offer. Obviously, you can see it's screen-based. It enables video calling. It enables video door entry. Also, you can have a mirror app, so that if people want to sit in their chair and have a tablet or a phone, they can access it from wherever they want to. On the other side, there's also Smart Connect. This has been developed as a cheaper solution for providers who are looking to replace and just add some functionality to what they already have. This can use existing wiring that you would already have in a scheme, so is a lower cost replacement that is fully digital still, but has the quick connection time, that does come in terms of with functionality around control for the provider, but is a cheaper solution. If anybody wants to talk to us about any of those, please do get in touch. But what I want to focus on more is what happens when people are going through the journey of digital switchover. So there's really 3 parts to this journey. Arguably there's a 4th, but I'm going to focus on the 3, which is switching to a cloud-based digital platform, switching an estate of digital to an estate of digital dispersed alarms, and also switching analog schemes to digital solutions. In terms of moving to a digital platform, I've talked about some of those advantages already. You get much better stability and resilience. There are cost savings that come with it, because you no longer have to have a separate DR site. You'll no longer be getting large phone bills because they're digital calls. You don't have to provide an uninterruptible power source because it is cloud-based. And maintenance and updates can be done remotely instead of having the need to have engineers coming on site. It also enables you to revolutionize your working methods because it's not site dependent. And we certainly have a very large army of ARC operators who are fully home-based and supported at home because they're using a digital cloud-based platform. It also enables you to evolve your service and your offering with the technology that evolves around it. And key to this is it is continually being updated, and also we're developing APIs that enable us to connect with other technology that's coming to the market that can enable us to become much more of a proactive service that everyone wants to get to. But what are the challenges of moving to a digital arc? Well, data is always one of the big challenges. Getting hold of the data early, getting it into the right format, making sure that it's fit for purpose. That takes a long time, and actually getting to the point of being able to share data with a provider is always one of the hardest things it seems to get to. So getting that quickly is very important. Training is vital. You need everyone involved, any operators, any staff that can be using the system to embrace that change, but they're only going to do that if they've got proper training and can see the efficiency gains that are going to come from it. In terms of one of the big challenges becomes the actual state of alarms and equipment that's going to feed into that arc. You need to understand if that's going to have to be reprogrammed if you don't have a current phone line that you own. If there is reprogramming, then the timescales are vastly changed, because that will involve either remote programming via phones or actually people going onto site to do that, and communications around that is quite a big challenge in itself. So it needs to be thought through and planned. If you do have a phone line that can be redirected, it's much easier, because it can all be done at once, but you need to make sure that any devices that are using different protocols have been tested and that they're all working before you do that redirect. You also should never forget, if you have existing GSM units, they will need to be changed as well, and the process for reprogramming those and redirecting them will be a bit different, so it needs to be not just left as an afterthought. What about going on to a digital dispersed estate? Again, if you are switching out a large number of alarms, planning becomes key, because this is a long process. From our experiences, if you are able to do phone reprogramming, 70% of that can be done without an engineer, but that still needs a robust process around it and will need a lot of man hours. But you will also then find that 30% will need some form of intervention from a member of staff or an engineer to switch over those alarms, and that needs to be planned through, and unfortunately that can add a lot of cost into the process. Whoever you're working with to do it, you need to make sure you work as a team. Communication needs to be done jointly, and anyone who's having this change needs to have any concerns waylaid very quickly. You've also got to be aware that service users may resist this change. They will be happy with their alarm that they think works fine. You need to make them realise not only the benefits of going digital, but also the risks and what will happen if they don't move. And there will be pushback on that, and being prepared for that is absolutely key. You'll also, in contacting people to let them know what's going to happen and to get them going to change, you will need multiple attempts via mail, potentially email. You may have to contact relatives. You'll have lots of phone calls. It is a multifaceted approach you need to take to get through to everyone. You also need to be aware going into it that the cost of these alarms are more expensive, and they're more expensive to make. There is an annual connection cost, which is something you're not used to having. And actually, if you want to pass this cost on to consumers, they will be resistant to doing so. So you need to think about how that's going to manage. Finally, I'm not quite sure how I'm doing on time here. I've just been told time's up. I'm sorry, I was going to talk about schemes. I'm sure it will come out in the discussion. I will stop now. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much. Put the camera off. Yeah, thanks very much, Dave. We will come back to schemes actually in the panel discussion, so we'll maybe pick up some of those points there. Right, next, I'm going to hand over to Kelly Watts from Sky Response. So there's Kelly. Nice to see you there, Kelly. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thanks ever so much. Just to check I'm sharing. Okay, I'd just like to introduce myself to you. I'm Kelly Watts. I'm Customer Success Manager at Sky Response. I've been working at Sky Response for nearly 2 years. My experience within the tech sector covers delivering a fully managed tech service across the West Midlands through to managing the decommissioning of a service for a housing association. Now working within our customer success department, my focus today is around the customer experience, supporting new and existing customers to implement the system. Okay, so just introducing Sky Response. Sky Response is a SaaS solution offering a fully cloud-based flexible solution handling all alarms and events in the emerging world of IoT. Our first digital care units were implemented in 2014 within the elderly care sector, used for all alarm handling scenarios from B to C up to nurse call systems. Our first fully digital response centre was up and running in 2016 and now used extensively by local authorities and tech service providers in Scandinavia, supporting digital transformation for care and support services. We currently have approximately 700 end customers handling 10 million alarms and events per month, continuously upgrading monthly through leases without downtime. By design, our system has high security, integrity, and compliance. There are 4 elements to the Sky Response system. So we have Central, which is our alarm handling interface, Admin, which is used for data imports and flexible alarm routing, the Response app for responding to alarms in the field, and the Alarm app, a lone worker solution or a standalone GPS alarm. So opportunities with new technology. With so much change to technology in recent years and more to come on the horizon, an open approach is needed to fully understand the technological shift and what this means to our internal and external business environments, impacting on business models, services, and daily working processes. Although Sky Response is relatively new to the UK market, we bring a wealth of experience as the Nordics have already been through the migration from analogue to digital. We believe part of this successful transform was from our openness and willingness to work in collaboration. We understand that what we are good at and what we want to leave to others, meaning to deliver a successful solution that works for an individual organisation can be achieved through integration and interoperability. Integration and interoperability are an innovative approach for the sector. The opportunity this brings for the clients is fantastic. Being able to offer a customer a true solution for their needs through installing tech devices personalised for their individual needs, as a one-size-fits-all or a limited choice of equipment is not a suitable solution. Our open published APIs support fast and low-cost integrations for new applications, offering value through the ability to integrate to a vast array of devices and also allowing systems to talk to each other, meaning our platform can facilitate the foundations of a truly personalised, scalable solution, enabling people to benefit from the best next-generation solutions for their individual requirements, all reporting through the same interface. So then it takes us to a new way of working. New technology brings change to working processes and procedures, but first, we need to recognise that traditional technology consists of a device hub with peripherals, whereas new technologies are standalone, reducing risk for the client if peripherals fail. Therefore, the way in which we handle these alarms also requires change. Many homes will have several devices with individual transmitters sending alarms, some of which may transmit video streams, images, alerts, or voice-to-voice connectivity. So a new approach to receiving and handling these alarms is also needed. So Sky Response Central has been ergonomically designed using widgets on one page, a flexible interface, improving efficiencies for the alarm handling flow. And in turn, this design reduces navigation. Reduces navigation time when handling calls and when training new users on the system. Which leads us on what we actually offer our partners. A true cloud-based and digital solution hosted by AWS reduces support costs whilst delivering a high specification cloud infrastructure, offering levels of resilience and security which cannot be achieved by on-premise solutions. Therefore, our system is used by and built for today's and tomorrow's technology, so the platform can support your business through the technological changes and flexibly scale as you grow and change in an interoperable world. The strengths of our solution allow you to future-proof your business models and service delivery, not only through the technological capabilities, but through its ergonomic design, ensuring a user-friendly flow for handling these alarms. And how we support our partners. Part of our culture at Sky Response is continuous improvement. The development of our platform is informed by our customers and partners. Being a tech company, it's our duty to react to changes in technology, but we also recognise that being adaptable is equally important. We actively listen to the needs and requirements to deliver the best help and support that we can. In response to learning how best we can support our customers and partners, we have created the Partner Portal. The Partner Portal is designed as a go-to hub containing all the information a partner would need, a place where technical information for using the system can be accessed, training guides to help partners assist their customers, materials relevant for completing tenders or for sales and marketing, amongst other useful bits of information to do with migration and how we can support you through that journey as well. Our goal is that our partners and customers have access to what they need, when they need it, to feel and be supported at all times. So thank you for your time today. If you'd like to learn more, please contact Sky Response directly or myself via the details on this slide. I thank you for your time today.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed, Kelly. There's lots to think about there, and probably some synergies as well with some of the previous presentations we've heard. So just for people that have been popping some, thanks, Kelly. People that have been popping questions in the chat window, please carry on doing that. We'll pick up those in the next session. So if there's anything burning that you always wanted to ask, and pop that in now, I'm collating the questions. And Karen Bradshaw, just to let you know, we'll come back to you in your hand up later on as well. The final presentation this morning is from Richard Kennedy from 2IC Care. So Richard, if you'd like to just pop your camera on, there you are, great. Well, I'll hand over to you now. You've got 10 minutes. I'll see you soon. Over to you.
Thanks, James. Just sharing my screen. Can everyone see this? All okay?
Yeah, it's looking good to me. Thanks, Richard.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you very much for having me. By way of introduction, Richard Kennedy from the MD of 2IC Care. I guess my background and experience is taking modern technology into sectors that have been underserved by technology in the past. And I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but what I mean by modern technology are things like centralization, automation, and using data to make operational decisions. And what I've observed coming into the sector is that everyone is so passionate and knowledgeable about the sector, but what's really holding everyone back is what we're all here to talk about is the state of technology in the sector. So really excited to talk to you about our product, Andy, but also how everyone can manage this change and the transition easily. So just to set the scene, I come from a double-edged sword, right? Because I come from outside of the technology-enabled care sector, although becoming very familiar with it now. One is that I'm new to the sector, but the benefit is that I have a lot of experience coming from another sector that's very mature in the use of technology. And this slide here just sort of sets the scene on, on the far right here is what most sectors outside of the care sector are using. The whole infrastructure is built on the cloud, and therefore they've matured into running their organization with data, which means that everything can be more efficient and effective. And whether that's maximizing profits or ensuring that your service users are living the highest quality life independently by themselves. And we can use data to make those decisions. So I think it just sets the scene that the care sector has, as we all know, has a long way to go. But we're all here, everyone's very passionate and wants to help. So I think for me, the key slide here is this one. With this analog to digital transition, it is a once in a blue moon opportunity for a sector to invest in modern technology and get that modern infrastructure in place. It just doesn't come along very often. There's normally in other sectors, there's regulational changes that get pushed out, but this is a physical thing that's happening. So, and what I'm observing in the market is that people are sticking to what is familiar with them at the moment, and essentially investing £500,000 or £1 million, whatever that large sum of money is, into a digital like-for-like solution. And sure, that's easy and familiar and it solves the immediate problem. However, you're going to continue to have the same frustrations as that you've always had. And this is a 7 to 10 year decision. So if you make the decision to go for a digital like-for-like, you are stuck with that for a very long time. Or you can be bold and understand the potential of modern technology and start to have better monitoring with data-informed decisions, enable your long-term technology-enabled care strategy, increase the independence of your service users, and reduce those reactive care costs, and future-proof yourself for a proactive and preventative care model. So if you leave, this is the main slide, I think, of my presentation, is be bold and be the person that is proud of making a change in the care sector, because the care sector will not change if you take the path on the right, and everyone's responsible. So how do we achieve that? We achieve it with technology. Andy has this incredible interoperability technology that essentially allows us to connect to any electronic device, agnostic of the communication frequency and the supplier. So, on that first slide I had was on the far right was everyone making decisions with data. To make effective and efficient decisions with data, you need really high quality data. To get a high volume of high quality data, you need the best infrastructure in place. Andy has this interoperability technology that is the environment that collects the most high quality and high volume data, which allows you to, getting to I'll just go through these, but it gives you device freedom, which helps you meet individual needs and outcomes, which gives you higher quality and service user specific data, actionable insights for preventative care, early intervention, which gives us our vision, right, is greater independence, higher quality life, and reducing reactive care costs. So it all starts with the infrastructure that you put in place today. That's like anything in life or any other sector, or your personal technology at home. So Andy solves the analog to digital transition with our hub that goes into the home. It gives you an open technology-enabled care solution. You gain freedom of device, and you unlock the ability for proactive and preventative care. So our phase one immediate benefit. So what we're trying to educate the market is our technology does a lot. So we have a digital hub that goes into the home that has the things that I'll go through today. but it also unlocks proactive and preventative care, where all this data flows through to an operating platform for proactive and preventative care. But what we want to do is educate the market on Andy we think is the best and has the best infrastructure. So we don't want to put 50 hubs into your local authority. We want to put 2,000, 3,000, because that's you've got this one opportunity, and it's the only way that you'll make a change. So in phase one, so we can connect to any peripheral. So you gain device freedom, you navigate supply chain issues, you can personalize care packages, and use existing peripheral stock or legacy stock in play. But it also allows you to look outside of the current care suppliers, and you might be able to buy a £10 sensor or a £5 thermometer to put into the home. So it allows you to really see the art of the possible. Improves resilience. So we're on our hub is essentially a computer or an iPhone, very modern technology that comes from another sector. That when in fact the US Special Forces and UK Defence use. So it's very sophisticated in terms of ensuring that the message gets through. And then we also have these low cost eSIMs as well that it's probably about £15 per annum per SIM, but the hub also has Ethernet and Wi-Fi as well. So it does a lot. Phase one, it's not enough time to go through it, but just at a high level, there's lots of benefits there. Phase two, this is what it's all about, right? This is our vision, and this is what we want to do for the care sector, is essentially improve the quality of life and reduce reactive care costs. And we can do that with data. So the more high quality and high volume data you have, the more you can understand your service users' behavior and get in front of them having a health incident that accelerates the deterioration into an environment where they need lots of care, which costs lots of money. And we can only do that with data. And to get data, you need the right infrastructure in place. And I really like this graph here. You know, you've got, this is the Scottish ADL Smart Care Life Curve, cutting the toenails. You know, people are struggling to cut their toenails. That's sort of the beginning of the life curve. And at these ones here, and what have we got there? Struggling to do heavy housework. That can cost the care sector about £2,800 in that group. And then we're getting into if they're struggling to do a full wash, all the way to transferring from the toilet, that can cost around £8,000 per person. And then we get into things. So we want everybody to live long lives and not go into this last section here. So this is what we can do with data, but you have to get the infrastructure in place first. And this is how you should be looking at this problem of the transition. Everyone will be saying this. So it is a transformation journey. It's really hard, like anything in life when you do something different. But this is a time frame, and we'll send this a time frame around how you can go about it. So do a lot of due diligence. And the key point I want to make here is that 2IC Care is only successful if our platform is adopted successfully. So we will be there holding your hand through this journey, educating you on how to use data, how to use the platform, etc., and how to optimize that. We won't just be dropping a whole lot of hubs at your door. Managing cultural change. We've all been through this. I've done it a lot in another sector. You need to have a strong and clear vision. You need to be courageous because change is uncomfortable, but it's very rewarding. And we will not get the UK care sector out of this crisis if we don't have courageous leaders who are willing to take responsibility and be the people that want to make the change. We have to be empathetic and listen to people because a lot of people have been doing something one way for a long time, so it's threatening. But it's still, even though it's threatening, it's still the right thing to do. You want constant and simple communication, and double down on change champions that are really putting their hand up and share success stories. And this is very cheesy, but be the change that you want to see in the sector. I think I'm running out of time. I'll just skip past that slide. The other thing, just from observing the sector, is that there's a lot of noise in the market. There's a lot of people who are distracted by lots of different marketing and flash words and things like that. what I would suggest is become very objective, almost into a matrix level around what each supplier can do. And I think this objectively helps you make a decision for your analog to digital transition. It also helps you communicate the decision that you want to do to your commissioners, to your directors, etc. And we can help you with all of this. We have a procurement pack that helps. But this is probably another key slide. Try and avoid the noise and get objective. That's me. Thank you. And if you have any questions or would like to find more about Andy, please do reach out.
We've got, I'm not sure how much you missed there. I think I managed not to unmute myself. So I was going to say thank you very much indeed, Richard, for that. We've got about 55 minutes left now for the panel discussion before I hand back to Jerry to summarise and finish off. But I thought I just wanted to pick up on some of the questions which have already been asked in the chat box. The first one actually came very early on from Paul Higginbottom from Sheffield City Council. And maybe if I can just get all of the panelists now just to pop your beautiful faces up again and just wait for Kelly to come back on. I'm sure Kelly will join us in a minute. Just
yeah, it won't let me. I apologise. It says you cannot start your video.
Maybe Julia can do something around.
Thanks.
That's grand. Right, you're all there. You're all there. Survived the first half of the morning. So yeah, just going back to Paul's question, which was, is there a do's and don'ts guide to support the journey from analog to digital? I do know that Jerry put something in the chat window. Not everybody necessarily might have seen it. He did say that the NHS and Telecare Stakeholder Action Plan is due a refresh. Should be published in June, July time, and is available certainly through the UK telehealthcare website. But really just to open up to the panel, places where you would go, or if you know if there are any resources around which you might also refer to as well. I've got one or two other ideas, but I'll sweep those up at the end if you don't mention them. So would anybody like to start off? Where would you go for some good advice about do's and don'ts to support the journey from analog to digital?
I mean, this helps you a lot, James, but I think, go to the likes of the NRS and Millbrook who see everything from a helicopter view, right? They've seen lots of people make mistakes, but do really good things and understand the pros and cons of each supplier and solution from end to end. I think that would be if I was in a local authority position, that's what I'd be talking to NRS. Yeah.
Would anybody else like to come in? If you don't want to, that's fine. Oh, David.
One thing that I mean, everyone's journey is going to be different depending on the unique circumstances they're in, how they run their telecare, what their portfolio is. What I will often do when I'm talking to someone potentially who wants to go on that journey with us, I'll put them in touch with one or two people who we see as being in a similar situation to talk to, who have been through that journey, so that they can learn about their experiences, get an idea of what they felt went well, what felt they should have done differently, and also to a certain extent just get an idea of how we work and how we will go through that journey, because it really is a journey and you need to be doing it as a team, and if you can't work together as a team, it won't go well. So yeah, I think talk to people who've been through it before, and anyone who does this well will be happy to put you in touch with people who've been through that journey with them.
Yeah, certainly. Steve, I think you've unmuted yourself. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, mainly because I thought, I'll end up talking and I wouldn't have been unmuted. I think David's view is good. I think speaking to organisations that have gone through the same sort of pattern or the same route is always helpful. I recommend you speak to a number of suppliers. Whoever your current supplier is, perhaps should be your starting point. but don't just stick with one provider. Get a cross section of opinion. Advisories or consultancies such as Tex Advisories are clearly well placed to provide a good level of independent view as to the options to upgrade. But I think that my message really is to not procrastinate. We're down to 31 months, time is starting to run out. So I think doing something is really the important thing, and not just pondering it too much.
Yeah, that's great. Kelly, did you want to add anything more at this point?
I think it's really important, if you're looking at changing your service, is to look at lots of different angles. So not just ask advice from providers, but also ask as well what the customers want. And I think that, the end user is very, very important with this as well. And they should be going along that journey too. They're going to be having to pay a lot of money for a digital alarm unit, for example, and they can't afford it. How many people are going to leave the service because of that? What are the technologies out there? And to make sure that you have a platform that can facilitate a multitude of technologies.
Great, thanks, Kelly. I mean, the things that I was going to add in terms of kind of useful places to go to as well. We've already talked about the government's Telecare Stakeholder Action Plan. There's also some great resources on the UK Telehealthcare website about the digital switchover. So that's certainly a good place to look. The TSA back in 2020, end of 2021 now, published the Commissioner guidance on the digital switchover, and there's some really, really great guidance in there as well about things to do and not to do. There's a risk tool as well, which is suggested, things to consider when you're looking at who you probably ought to be targeting when you're thinking about risk ranking your population. So certainly in terms of understanding who the people are that have got analog units now, we know that only a tiny proportion really at this point in time of the population have actually had their analog units switched out. So where do you start first? How do you prioritise the work that's to be done? So they're probably some really good places to look. Okay, I'm going to pick up on some of the other questions that come on the chat as we go, but just to sort of kick off the panel discussion, and I will come back to some of the questions that other people have asked as well, was what would be your kind of killer message to the audience today? So if they happen to have a busy life and they're just about to go off the call and you want them to hear one thing, what's your take-home message for them? What's the one thing they should take away from today's discussion? So I'm going to give each panel member an opportunity to talk about that. And we're going to start with Steve first, though.
All right, all the pressure. I really was hinting towards that in my statement just a minute ago, which is, I think the important thing is to really get on and start making those changes, to start updating systems, replacing systems. My greatest worry on behalf of the sector is we're going to run out of time. I'm very conscious that the provision of telecare services is not a statutory requirement. Providing care is, but not providing telecare. And the greatest danger, I think, for the whole sector is 2025 will end with a much smaller cohort of people receiving the benefits of telecare than we are now. In other words, organizations will have run out of time to upgrade. They may not be able to find the funding to do the upgrading work. And the only recourse left is to actually withdraw the service. And I think that would be a horrendous outcome for service users. I think it would be a very weak outcome for the sector. And I think it would set back and damage the NHS, because it's going to put more pressure on the NHS as well. So I think, let's, as a sector, let's start really embracing the changes and get on with it, is my message, James. Great,
thanks, Steve. I'm going to go around the order of my screen, which you don't know, so I'm going to land it on you. David's next. What's your killer message?
It's really hard to say one message. Everyone's going to be saying, just you need to get on with doing something and taking action now, even if the action happens further down the line, but you need to have that plan and get everyone all the stakeholders who need to be involved in making those decisions and signing things off, get them on board and get them aware of it. One thing I'm telling people now is if on your risk register isn't the fact that analog alarms could start failing and are starting to fail on quite large scale, then that needs to happen, because that will get people realizing this isn't just something that might go away. It is a genuine problem that is going to have a potential risk of life at the end of it. I'm also going to pick up on Steve's point. If you're in a situation where potentially a service is at risk that's being provided, don't just shut it down, because we've worked with organizations who needed to do that, and we've transitioned customers over to us, and we've done that in a seamless way that meant no one was left vulnerable and with a loss of service. So, you know, whatever action you might feel you're being forced to take, have conversations with us and, you know, other providers potentially as well, but we can come up with creative solutions to these problems, and we're getting very good at doing it.
That's great. Thanks, David. Richard.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I think to one of my earlier slides that there's a lot of noise going on, and it's a big decision that everybody needs to make. You know, big financial decision that affects a lot of people, etc. But do be very aware that if you do go down the digital like-for-like solution, not much is going to change, it's a long-term decision. It's a 7 to 10 year decision in terms of the capital allocation, and you're not going to have this opportunity again to make a change, you know, a really positive change, and put the care sector into a essentially, you know, be responsible for changing the UK care sector. It's a unique opportunity, and it's exciting. So try and objectify the noise and bring it down to, hey, do I want to go digital like for like, or do I want to go down this environment where there's open infrastructure, collecting lots of data, and helping scale the care sector and improving quality of life. They're big decisions, but you need to make them as, you know, black and white as possible. And like David said, yes, it's going to cost more money, this new way, because it's new technology. It deserves to hold more value. Absolutely. I know money's hard to come by, but we all kind of need to work together and create a, you know, present and articulate a really positive vision, and with using modern technology. And it's scary, but it's not risky. You know, every other industry is using this modern technology and data, and it works. So that was a long rant, but yeah, hopefully that resonates.
That's great. Thanks, Richard. And Kelly.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you, Richard. And I think that when looking at new technologies, new platforms, you need to find something that's going to future-proof your service and complement the new way of working, suitable for today's and tomorrow's technology. Look at alternatives, question the existing way of working, and can things be done differently? And I think those are really important things to consider.
That's fab. Thanks. Okay, I've certainly got sort of 7 kind of audience questions that have come in already. So I want to make sure that I cover all those off as well. So I'm going to go there first. And it kind of draws in as well with some of the things that I was saying, and some of the things certainly that Richard and Kelly were talking around in terms of customers. So we've got a question from Lee Inman from Kent County Council, which was around communicating with those kind of end users and people that draw on care and support. So the question was, what do the panel think we should be doing relating to communicating updates and progress? And how often should we be sharing that with people that draw on care and support? Because I guess it's fine for us having a bit of a technical conversation here, but what are your views on involving people that draw on care and support? What should we be telling them, when, and how should we potentially be involving them in shaping and developing the services? So is there anyone that would like to come in first on that one? If not, I'll pick you.
I'm happy to talk about some of our experiences. I think with Ken in particular, that what they're doing is very different, and they have great ambitions, which is really exciting in terms of what they're doing with their telecare. But you need to be careful, I think, around over communicating to a certain extent, because the end users don't want to be bombarded with information, because they will find it confusing, and if you send too much, it will all just go unread. And a lot of these people, the only way that you're going to get them engaging with it is either by talking to them directly or by sending them letters, because they're not necessarily going to go onto a website. They're not necessarily going to be reading emails. But that said, some will be. So you need to think about a multifaceted way of meeting everybody's kind of needs in terms of how they want to be communicated with, which does make it more complicated. I think you should also not underestimate the importance of communicating with the family as well. So generally we will have family as points of communication as part of the telecare services, and they might be the best people to get messages through, especially if it's around changing people's equipment out, because they might be the ones who actually will need to be there at the time, who will explain it, or potentially will do swapping out an alarm if it's just a pure switch from an analog device to a digital device. So really think strategically about how much you communicate and when, and just don't make it too complicated, because it can really scare people.
Yeah, I think probably just to come in on your point there, David, I mean, we've certainly got experience ourselves of reprogramming or swapping out analog to digital devices. And certainly the approach that we've taken is communicate with people when you need to communicate with them at the right times. There's no point in telling people, if the plan isn't to swap their units out for another year, there's probably not much benefit in sending them a letter now, giving them a call now to let them know that this is happening. Actually, what you want to do is contact them fairly close to the time, and probably at the same time arrange the date that you're going to go around and do those switch outs. So that's certainly something to consider. You're thinking about planning it and making sure that the resource is there as well to do that, because that's going to be one of the challenges for the future too.
I would also do a plea, because I've just thought about one time that we got really caught out. If you're communicating, it will be you communicating with your service users and your customers. Please make sure your partner in the digital switchover is aware of all those communications and has been, engaged in the process of putting them together, has seen them. Because actually we've had situations where communications have gone out without talking to us. And yes, we don't have the right to say how they communicate with their customers, but the information they gave them wasn't overly accurate as a result of us not being involved, and so made it more complicated, and ultimately meant there had to be more communication. So again, teamwork is really key in making sure the people you partnered with, the organizations you partnered with, are always engaged in those bits of the process, because they'll often be getting the phone calls.
That's great. Thanks, David. Steve's next, and I'm going to go to Kelly. So over to you, Steve.
The one element of communication that really comes to mind is almost a safeguard, which is that, I'm not sure whether people are aware, but as the digitalization process is rolled out by exchange to exchange, not solely Openreach, Virgin and other providers as well, but Openreach probably represents, I guess, 80% of the connectivity that's out there. Not all of the CPs, the communication providers, of which there are circa 650 in the UK, will necessarily go and visit the property and oversee the upgrade of the process. In other words, it's quite conceivable that you will get a box through the post with a note on that box as a service user. I'm talking about, us as consumers, as well as an elderly person with a dispersed alarm unit. But the first you may know is getting a box through the door with a note saying, oh, by the way, in a week's time, you'll be switched over to a digital phone network. Just plug this box in, and you can plug your telephone into the back of the box to allow you a traditional analog phone to work. They will have no intention of actually visiting the property. Now, all of the CPs are aware of telecare devices. They will do their utmost to make sure that nobody's put into a vulnerable position. But I think there is a message there. I'm certainly no expert in how we communicate this, but it's almost a message to service users that if you get a box through the post telling you the system's going to be upgraded and you haven't had any communication from the organisation, your local authority, housing association, private company that is providing your telecare service, then you must give them a ring or let them know. You know, that's almost the safety net within the system. But it's quite frightening, as I said, that it is quite conceivable, and it will happen, that some people will simply get a router through the door in a box and say, you need to plug this in for your phone system to continue working. And there's a week on Monday that the changeover will happen, and an engineer will not visit to check that out.
That's great. Thanks very much, Steve, for those words of wisdom. And Kelly.
Yeah, communication is so important, especially when services are changing. From my experience, it was built into the project plan of when to actually communicate, but know the customers. So there are different ways of communicating, and it's always important, if you can, try and push the customer to come back to you, to acknowledge that they have received that information in some way, shape or form, and keep a track of that, because there will always be a small selection of vulnerable people that may also require a visit. And that's also really important, to track that communication so that you're not missing anybody and you are doing the best. You know, when I did it, I ended up being at a door, figuring out sign language, somebody to communicate this, you know, and it's so, so important, because it's affecting them, and it's the end user that needs that information and needs to be communicated to in the best possible way to reach them.
That's great. Thanks very much, Kelly. I'll move on to another question now, which has come in advance. Slightly different topic. This is from James Bromley from North Somerset Council. And I might go to Richard first to start us off on this one. So the question is how can small tech companies hope to keep their developments in pace with the large corporate integrators, especially with artificial intelligence being on the scene now? So I suppose from a sort of a smaller organisation, maybe Richard, you'll start us off. And my perspective as well, I guess maybe we're one of the larger corporate integrators, if you like. We work with a whole range of different technology companies and suppliers, and I mean, I'll add my 2 pence in afterwards. But yeah, Richard, over to you first.
Yeah, thanks, James. Really interesting question, actually. From my experience, I would say the opposite. You know, small is fast, and big in corporate is typically slow. So it depends as a council, what you want, I guess. But you know, at smaller organisations, there's pros and cons, right? And you'll know that there are some legacy suppliers in the market who are big and very much corporate based, but they've been incredibly slow to innovate. You know, and that's exactly what's happened in the sector. Whereas a company like Andy, that is, you know, relatively a lot smaller, we're moving very fast. We're innovating in a very exciting way. But everything has pros and cons, right? We're a smaller business, so we might be looked at as not as credible or not as safe, whereas a corporate might be seen as safe but slow. So you have to understand when you make a decision, what are you weighing up? I would also say working with larger corporates that aren't innovating is actually more risky than working with smaller and newer businesses. And when you're evaluating a business, there's lots of things, right? There's product, team, how well you get along with those people, how good are they executing, do they say what they say they're going to do? So I'm not sure exactly what you're alluding to, but that would be my point on that bit. And then on the second part of the question around AI, I hear this phrase going around a lot in the sector, and I've got a lot of experience and expertise, well, not expertise, but a lot of experience here. Artificial intelligence is not relevant in the care sector today. To have artificial intelligence, you need a high volume of data and a high quality of data to actually create artificial intelligence. No one has really has that from my observations. However, there's a future where we can, if we put the right infrastructure in place and collect enough data, then we can go into this artificial intelligence world. I think what a lot of people are talking about is just essentially using basic logic like if and like a spreadsheet to create proactive and preventative care. Artificial intelligence is not relevant. It's aspirational to the care sector, but not relevant to in practice today, I would say. Sorry, probably a couple of contrarian views there from me, but that's how I see it.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Just to pick up on the kind of the language there. I think maybe a couple of years ago I was hearing the term artificial intelligence in this space being banded around quite a lot more, and I think maybe people are starting to cotton on to the fact that artificial intelligence probably isn't where we are at now, but like you say, aspirational. And for me, I mean, as an occupational therapist, the thing that's important for me and the kind of lens I look for is how can you use data and get that kind of intelligent insight, drawing on information which just wasn't available to us before, to be able to make some decisions. And technology for me is just an enabler. The data is an enabler to better decision making, not there to make decisions either for me, or if I was using it for myself, I don't necessarily want a computer or a machine making decisions for me about my care and my pathway. I want either to be in control of that myself or to get some good advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about and is doing some kind of interpretation themselves. I mean, certainly in terms of, a bit like you've talked about, some of the logic and the algorithms now which are available, and I think that's maybe what people mean when they're talking about artificial intelligence, is can you get to an understanding, much faster, and can you be able to understand what's happening for someone if there's a change in the way they're behaving or their lifestyle or with their health condition, which means that you can put a proactive intervention in place to meaning that they can live a healthier, happier life longer, and which is kind of what you alluded to in that life curve that you showed on one of your slides.
Yeah, absolutely, James. And I think you only need, the majority of the market is button in a box at the moment, but you only need a few data points to collect a few data points to make a material impact on the quality of someone's life. Even if it's two sensors, to manage to look at if they're making a coffee every day, and how warm their house is, and if they're sitting in that room. So a sensor, a 10-pound sensor, a 5-pound thermometer, temperature gauge, and a 10-pound adapter to manage the kettle. They are really powerful data points that you could get in front of health incidents and be proactive and preventative. But it's a long way from artificial intelligence to your point.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess this is the point I was making, in my presentation, was how do you start to begin to get on that journey to understand and to really make that transition from the kind of taking what you're doing now. Are you doing just a like for like switch out with some analog kit, with some digital kit, which quite honestly probably does the same thing? Or are you looking for something which gives you some data-driven opportunities and really means that over the course of the next 5 years, you can remodel how your health, social care, domiciliary care, supported living services are provided to support a sustainable health and care system. It's a bit like that Henry Ford quote, isn't it? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And I guess that's one of my concerns, that unless you are thinking about doing things differently, we're not really going to see that shift this presents. David, I know you've got something.
You see me, Chuck.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't know whether people are thinking of Apello as a large corporate integrator. I hope we're not, because I don't feel like we are. But one of the key kind of ethos of when we've developed CareNet and continue to develop it is that it can work with all the other technology that's being created and to collect that data and to use that data for the purposes it's been designed for and other things as well. So if you've got something great that you're working on, that you're building, that you think has great application, it's worth talking to us and engaging with us, because we can work from an early stage to make sure it's very easy to then integrate into a digital platform to take that data feed using APIs, and then work out how actually we can most usefully use that, whether that be that we're having proactive calls going out from the call center or alerting carers and things like that. And that's the bit, when you talk to our product team, it's the bit they're getting really excited about now, because digital, while it is this, everybody's looking at it, well, we've got to, you know, it's an expensive solution to the digital switch problem that we didn't ask for. Actually, it's going to unlock a huge amount of potential in terms of how the tech sector is going to hopefully be the solution to the social care problem we have, whereby we've got an aging population, and at the moment the social welfare system is creaking at the seams, but through the technology that's being developed in this space, we can hopefully bring the cost down, but also most importantly, keep people happy and healthy in their own homes, which is where people want to be cared for as they go into older age. So it is really exciting, and we know we want to work with the great innovators who are small, nimble, and are doing really creative things.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just busting again, but just to carry on from what David's saying is, if councils make this courageous but correct decision of investing in open infrastructure and integrating with lots of different players, you know, it will fundamentally change the care and health sector in the UK. And I know it sounds big, but it really will, because all of a sudden, you know, you've got 1.5 million people on these dispersed alarms. That's a lot of data that starts at the bottom and flows all the way up. So, you know, they will be the there's probably not many other countries and organizations in the world that have that much data on a cohort of, that much health and care data on a cohort of people. So in terms of how we can learn as a aggregate, as the care sector, it's incredible. It's kind of like world first stuff. And this is what I mean, how this opportunity is so unique. Yeah, so, you know.
That's great. And just for me to come in, really, I guess we see ourselves as a bit of a systems aggregator. So we're working as a lead provider or a strategic partner with NHS or local authority organisations. I think at the last count we were working with around about 40 different technology providers. We're certainly in the space where we're creating that capability to integrate data from a range of sources and present that back to commissioners, to individual practitioners, to the person themselves. So I think, I mean, whatever you do, and if any commissioners are on the call and listening in, before I was working for NRS Healthcare, I was a commissioner myself for 6 years, and I commissioned technology-enabled care services. And one of the challenges I had at that time as a local authority was the frustrations of all the procurement hoops, the length of time it can take to get decisions, the ability to move in an agile way with the latest innovators, and how to make sure that whatever service I commissioned, okay, it was you know, great at the time, but things move quite quickly, don't they, in this space? New products pop up, new organisations pop up, or their roadmaps change and develop. So whatever happens, you need the ability and the capability to be flexible. So that needs to be thought about. You know, when you're thinking about recommissioning or commissioning for the first time any of these new types of proactive and preventative services. So and then, you know, there are a range of players in the market. It's not just us. So. You know, do look around. Do take the opportunity prior to any procurement to reach out and talk to some of the players in the field as well, so that you can have those open conversations and see what's possible. I'm going to move just probably to pick off quite a quick one. There's another question there from Paul Higginbottom from Sheffield. I know Steve's put the answer in the chat there, but he says Sheffield operate a Tunstall alarm receiving centre. Is there a report where we can ask for details of the number of analogue call failures each period? Steve, I know you've put the answer. Maybe just want to say a word, and I'll come in as well, and probably offer David the opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah, it's a few years since I've used a PNC system, but from memory, there's a standard report that the system will generate, giving you the level of call failures over a period of time, over a month. And it's well worth doing, because if you see that getting worse, the chances are, the chances are that more than one or a number of changes within the digitalization process are taking place within your area. You know, there's the two aspects. One is a service user line being upgraded to a digital connection? But the other is the backhaul within the exchange system, which are being updated to IP all the time. And what we've seen as a sector over time is that caller failure rate getting higher and higher as the DTMF tone signaling on the backhaul connectivity, the IP backhaul, is starting to become problematic. So it's well worth monitoring over a period of time. It's really an indication of the problems that your service providers are going to get.
It's also worth noting on that that report only shows you one alarms where it's tried to call first time and it's failed and then eventually connects. What it won't tell you is how many people's alarms are simply failing to connect when the alarm's being pressed, and that's the worrying bit. And you only start to find that out when people or people's families call to complain because they pressed their alarm when they needed it and nothing happened. So it only gives you part of the picture. I was messaging one of my colleagues because we're trying to bring together a report that's going to model the change that we're seeing across a very diverse customer base, because we have customers all over the country. But it's only part of the picture. There are, I mean, I mentioned the digital bridge, which can help with that. So if it's a particular problem for you, do talk to us. Yeah, it's the biggest concern that we're going to suddenly see call failure rates skyrocketing, and that's when people will take action, not beforehand.
Yeah, I was just gonna come in on that as well. I know some people know that we partner with Apello as well, monitor an awful lot of dispersed calls for us, and we routinely get first-time call failure rate reports from Apello for each of our various contracts. It does differ across the country as well. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that I know, talking with Apello and also reported by the TSA, and going back to Steve's point early on around sheltered accommodation, is that, am I right in thinking you tend generally to see with analogue systems more first-time call failure rates within those shelter schemes than maybe you might do with dispersed alarms? Maybe between the two of you might want to comment on that. And Kelly, feel free to come in as well as an ARC.
I have a feeling you know more about that specific topic than me, so I'm not going to speak over you.
I think it's fair to say that because sheltered housing schemes tend to use protocols in a wider context, you know, because different alarm types, lift alarms, plumbing, you know, etc., bed occupancy, perhaps sometimes more than individual alarm devices, then obviously the more DTMF messaging you're giving, the more likely, I guess, it is that you're going to have potentially failures in that. And it's a good point David raised, is that, and that's one of the benefits, you know, this can be quite a negative discussion, but one of the benefits to moving to IP alarms is you've got this end-to-end communication. So the device will tell you that typically when the alarm was activated. And over the years, the amount of times I've had to console sheltered scheme managers who said, you know, I put a call on half an hour ago and, you know, I've said to your operator, you know, why is it taking half an hour? And the operator's going, no, I've answered it within 10 seconds. And it's the two truths, which are both correct, because the call center can only report with an analog device at the point it communicates with the platform. If it's dialed 2 or 3 times because of problems within the network, that is not necessarily presented to the operator. So, you know, moving to IP, does that have that true end-to-end connectivity that's there all the time, not just when the telephone dials through with an analog system, and then you have that established end-to-end connectivity.
It's worth noting as well that the other time that occurs is when someone is part of an analog sheltered scheme. And because it's analog, only one call can go through the line at one time. So someone might have been waiting for half an hour, and it's because the person who pressed the alarm beforehand was on the call for half an hour. And digital gives you a much higher number of calls that can go through. So you remove that problem. And again, there are some genuinely brilliant advantages like speed of connection time that come with going digital. And we've got to be evangelical about the opportunities that come from digital, not just the cost and the challenges that come with switching over.
Yeah, I've got a question for Kelly, actually. You're about, but it's probably my sort of lack of knowledge about the Sky response system, but presumably it's capable of handling almost sort of retrofitting analog calls into the system.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So it can handle analog, digital, and Internet of Things. So I've got an Alexa going through it as well. So it does do all of those different things. Interestingly, though, what David was saying around the call systems in shelter housing with obviously the one UAC line that will obviously you get put in a queue if two people press the button at the same time. I think these are the type of things that we need to start looking at with the differences between analog and digital. So the analog, you've got the risk in the sheltered housing with the one UAC line. Then in the homes, you've got the risk of just one unit controlling various devices as peripherals. And these obviously will be reduced when we move into the digital age, because things are going to work on a more one-on-one basis. So it's reducing that risk all the time. And it's so important to also recognize that along with that comes a different way of working on a platform as well. So you don't want it to work in the same way because the technology isn't working in the same way. So it's a new way of thinking, a new way of dealing with handling these alarms on a day-to-day basis. And that's something that part of migrating with the Sky Response platform, we look at in detail of how people are working currently and how they will work moving forward, because it's a different way of looking at working and to complement the technology as well.
So it probably kind of leads into you and probably between the panel, you may already have answered it, or you may want to add some other things to it. We've got a question from Adam Fay from CSL, and his question is, how should alarm receiving centres amend their processes and procedures to reap the benefits of digital? And maybe from my perspective as well, maybe open that up is, what else should other organisations do to reap the benefits of digital? I mean, if there's anything else that we haven't touched on so far. So should we start off with the ARCs first, if there's anything more to add to what you've already said, and then maybe think more broadly.
I suppose when it comes to the change in technology, you've also got the integrations. So let's say running a council or a housing association. So a council work very, very closely with social care systems. So for those systems to work together would certainly improve internal communications and processes, rather than having to work on several different systems. And the same with housing associations or councils that work with the repairs side of things, having all of those systems working together is also really a massive benefit from digital technology.
Thanks, Dave.
Can I come in? Sorry.
Yeah, Steve.
Go ahead, Steve. I'm still thinking my answer.
Sorry, James. Yeah, it is interesting. Combining a couple of thoughts and observations I put together, the cost of upgrading is quite significant, particularly within sheltered housing. And to some degree, I do wonder whether we as a sector have the time to do all the work between now and the switch off. And there are, cheaper solutions. A lot of housing associations have ended up decommissioning traditional one call systems in favor of putting in dispersed alarm units. That's great to a point. At least somebody has an alarm device then, but it really cuts any on-site staff out the loop, and it creates problems around the integration of door entry systems, which are quite common within sheltered housing. But using platforms, as Kelly's indicated, like Sky Response and others, you can actually route those calls in a very intelligent way because of an IP device. So you can route the call to a tablet, to a mobile phone on site. You can route by time of day, alarm condition. If it's a fire alarm, you can send that straight through the control center. If it's Mrs. Smith in flat 23, you can route that through to an on-site manager, to a tablet. And of course, if it's a mobile phone that the call's been routed to, a traditional scheme manager can go to the shops and still continue to take those calls. You can even actually transfer those calls to a mobile responder. And, the call center can then get on with other traffic while the mobile responder can continue to talk, arguably on a hands-free kit as that responder is going to attend the call and provide a reassurance to the point they get there. So there are different solutions. And the last observation I want to make, and I welcome input from the other panelists, is, and David made the point of moving to what we consider digital devices at the moment is quite expensive because of the recurring costs, because the devices typically have one or multiple SIMs to provide that data connectivity. And there are a lot of advantage of having a completely independent and dual alarm path. Having said that, it's better to have something than nothing at all, because as a commissioner, you can't afford it. The digital upgrade is presenting a digital connection to every house in the UK. It's only the bandwidth that is being debated at the moment. So, if you want broadband traditionally to stream video and TV, then you're going to have a full broadband service. And the basic service that's going to be put in by the likes of OpenReach will be narrowed on bandwidth, but it will still fully support a digital alarm device. So therefore, question, is there a need to actually commission devices with SIMs? And is there going to be an opportunity for a lower cost solution to have a dispersed alarm unit or digital alarm device plugged in as an Ethernet connection straight into the router? There are concerns around battery life. The router's got limited battery capability, but that's been expanded. So BT are now looking at providing 12 hours or so rather than the 1 hour. But losing the SIM out the device potentially could have a quite a dramatic cost-saving impact to commissioners. As I said, if it's this option of saying, well, I can provide service to 1,000 people not using SIMs, or 500 because of the extra cost of the SIMs, albeit not using a SIM might reduce the level of security a tiny bit. As a commissioner, you may well take the decision to go for the bigger volume.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's an interesting one. I mean, certainly again, in terms of seeing some of the tenders which are coming out at the moment, they all seem to be requiring SIMs to be provided as part of the solution. I think I may have in the past heard of one local authority that had gone down the line of IP connection only, and that has some of its own challenges. But it'll be interesting to see the local authorities and NHS approach to risk in that respect, I think.
It's interesting, and I'm sure we all have different experiences, but if I went back 10 years ago, my broadband was incredibly flaky. It was low capacity. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've had a fiber connection, not expensive, 40 gig or whatever, 40 meg, but it's as reliable as anything these days. So it's horses for courses at the end of the day.
I think it's interesting. I was going to say that ADAS report that I referenced earlier that's just been published certainly talks in there around social care practitioners need to have an understanding of commercially available broadband options so that they can have those conversations with the people that they're seeing day to day. So presumably for people that don't have broadband at the moment, have never seen the need for it, but actually what is out there and how do you find a low cost option that you can introduce to your clients.
Yeah, and of course, if the alarm device is Wi-Fi enabled, then arguably there's no reason why you can't, within the context of a sheltered housing scheme, have a single, decent bandwidth fiber connection into the scheme, and then just link to that router via Wi-Fi connectivity. Again, looking at saving on SIM costs.
Great. David, I'm going to come to you next before I move on. I'm also conscious of time, so just for Julia, who's sitting in the background, I do know we've got 6 minutes left. We've got a similar number of questions. So after this, we're going to do a quick fire round with the remaining questions. So Dave, keep this one brief and then we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, sorry, am I still answering the processes one?
Or not, we can move on to the next question.
What I will say, and it's been covered to a certain extent, but because you get so much more information through your art when you go digital, it does enable you to make massive changes in terms of how you run that arc, and also to do it more efficiently. For instance, one thing that Steve pointed out, when you can identify and route all of your door entry calls, well, we use that as where we put people who are training, so that we can get them used to talking to people, but not in life-threatening situations, before they then get moved on to the more complex calls. So it gives a great opportunity to do that, and also your schemes and the people you're working with won't need to communicate with you as often, because they will have the power through things like SBR to update it online, to see their data, to see their reporting. So it creates a lot of efficiencies.
Thanks. I was just picking up as a comment from Angela Forbes in the chat. Don't respond to it, I'll just read it out because it's an interesting observation, which says, how about installing the SIM cards and only using them in sites where they're required? So a bit of a hybrid approach to this, or presumably a risk managed approach to this. There is a possibility of including the SIM card and keeping it dormant, i.e. not incurring any charges on sites where IP is an option, and then firing it up when the IP dies down. There's so much more flexibility in SIM charging models these days. I'm sure, Angela, I'm sure you're right, and we'll see all sorts of interesting opportunities. Right, I can see panelists nodding their heads. Right, we are going to go. We've got probably less than 5 minutes. A quick fire. David Cross has been very patient, been waiting since just after 11 o'clock. He has highlighted some internal barriers that you might see. So organisations maybe have got staff working for them that there's internal IT barriers, like maybe firewalls, software that's required to do their jobs can't be downloaded on laptops. Might be hard to use mobile devices to do what you need to do, and it's disempowering for the workforce and a bit frustrating. Any top tips anyone would like to come in? Just a few words maybe from each panelist on that, overcoming barriers to internal IT issues.
Well, I think part of that problem is quite often not having the right people at the beginning of a migration project, not involving the right people from the right departments, and also the IT departments not fully understanding the requirements of the technology and the changes in that. So there's a lot of education and lessons learned that need to be taken on board for moving forward with that. And I think that the biggest lesson that we can learn from that is it needs to be thought of from the inception of a migration project.
Yeah, which is good practice. Lots of projects is involving all your stakeholders, right from the beginning, thinking stakeholder mapping and think who else needs to be involved.
Yeah, and like with many projects, you never realise how many different departments are actually going to be involved.
Yeah. So mapping out your interdependencies as well. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. Hopefully, David, that's one thing which is useful to take away from that. The next question, I'm going to go back to Paul from Sheffield. The question, and are the panel aware of any financial modelling which demonstrates the cost associated with the analog to digital switchover for various stakeholders? So it's quite a big question, really. But
I don't believe that can be done as a one-size-fits-all. I did put a little response to that, but we've absolutely modelled, where cost savings are happening and how that then, and how, depending on whether you want to purchase units, rent units, will have an impact. And you've got to think not just about the cash flow, but also about the balance sheet. So we have done modelling when people have asked for it, depending on the structure they're looking at. And certainly when making decisions, it's not just the alarms you're thinking about, it's peripherals as well, because if you have to switch out all your peripherals, then that's going to almost double the cost. And that's why we've tried to make our alarms open to anyone, well, all and everyone else who's got peripherals like Tunstall and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from our perspective, where we've worked with existing customers to model what it might mean for the local authority, we've been able to put forward, do an evaluation of the range of products which are out there on the market, and look at historical data, say in the past year, practitioner prescribing behaviours have looked like this. This is how many of X, Y's and Z's you've issued, and then do a kind of a side-by-side comparison. So if you were to change to alternative supplier, then what would that cost you in the new world? So as well as, obviously cost is one element. There's lots of other factors you want to consider if you are thinking about changing from one kind of device to another. And you also have to obviously include things about cost of SIM cards or subscription fees with some of the new world stuff. Right, I think we've got less than 1 minute.
James, can I just jump in on that?
You've got the last word.
So really good question. There's two parts to the cost piece, right? And I think just hearing a few answers, it's very easy to become cost saving focused. But if you do that, it's a race to the bottom, and we completely forget about the whole vision and the whole reason why we're here in the webinar is to increase the quality of people's life and reduce reactive care costs. So if you're just focusing on going for the cheapest digital like-for-like tele alarm, you can say goodbye to that fluffy vision. It's only theoretical. So there's two parts, right? There's buying the tele alarm, the alarm that does the alarm, but also collects data. That's what you need to compare. And like David said earlier, the higher quality hub that you buy has better technology on it, so it deserves to have more value. The second piece is, if you're collecting lots of data, then you have the ability and the environment to save money on the adult social care budget. And that's where you really save money. So focusing just on the hubs, you might save £10,000. Cool. The adult social care budget, each council typically has a £100 million budget, £30 million on domiciliary care alone. If you can help with cash cost avoidance and savings by 5% on £30 million, because you're looking at data and you can reallocate your resources more efficiently, then you start to save millions and start driving it. So you need to look at it in two ways, and always keep the vision of changing the UK care sector at the forefront. Because if you forget about that, you'll go straight. Sorry, but yeah.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very great point to finish on and round up on. I'd like to personally say thank you very much to the panelists and hand back over to Jerry now.
James, thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists as well. So really, that's all my takeaways from the discussions today, which were really interesting, really in-depth, and covered such a wide range of helpful suggestions for the delegates. The big message from, I think, everyone, but mainly Steve and James, was around time being of the essence. The clock is ticking, it's happening now. We need to have our plans in place. Both from David and Richard, I think one of the interesting things for me is the investment now in order to make cost savings or more efficient services, or cover a wider range of service users and patients in the future. Is it possible to make that investment now to show those improved and cost-effective services in the future? And also from Richard, talking about more proactive and preventative services. We've been a very reactive agent, or very reactive industry historically. Are we ready to make that shift change? And are we ready to make advantage of the digital systems to be able to do that? And also the question about how we look at having the right people on the transition plans from Kelly, and also how we question the services we're delivering now as to how those services will look in the future. So some really good points from there. For anyone who would like the presentations from the presenters, they will all be available on the website after the event, and will the recordings be available both on the website and also on our YouTube page as well. So I'd like to thank James for taking on the job of keeping the panel in check and picking up on everyone's questions, and David, Kelly, Steve and Richard for taking the time of joining us, and Julia and Terence for looking after the production, which all went very smoothly today. Thank you very much. And we will see you again in July where we will be planning further events, virtual events as well. So do look out for those on your emails and on our website. I hope you all have a really great afternoon and rest of the week. And once again, thank you to all the delegates who spent their time asking questions and joining in the discussion. Thank you very much. Goodbye.